Liz was ruled dead by the physicians the moment she was born. As her mother went to the morgue a few hours later, she saw something unreal as she held the small girl's hand. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. When Analia and Fabian found out they were expecting their fifth child, a girl, they were ecstatic. They made the decision to call it quits and concentrate more on parenting their children going forward. There had been no difficulties from the start of the pregnancy, and Analia prayed that this would continue. Regretfully, things quickly went south. She went into labor 3 months ahead of schedule and was hurried into the operating room for an urgent C-section. Analia couldn't stop worrying before to receiving anesthesia. Though she prayed hers wouldn't end up that way, she had heard of a few preterm kids who died at delivery, but nature had other ideas about her. There were no indications of life in the infant when the physicians delivered her. They quickly pronounced the infant to be stillborn and took her to the morgue. However, they made a costly error. They never paused to consider if it was appropriate to allow the couple to meet the deceased girl. They would all regret their rash decision in a few hours. The doctor informed the little girl's parents of the terrible news after the body had been transported to the morgue. The reality was so horrible that they started crying uncontrollably. If Analia had had even a minute or two more with the kid before she died, it would have meant the world to her. Sadly, the young girl departed without saying hello or goodbye. Her parents' greatest regret was this. It took 12 hours for any attempts to see the girl to be successful. By then, it would be time for Analia and Fabian to go to the morgue and spend their last moments with their deceased child. The pair, doing their hardest to hold back their emotions, were supported by someone as they made their way to the morgue hand in hand. Even though they had never truly met, they only intended to express their gratitude to the girl and utter some kind words. They were also going to swear to keep her in their prayers at all times. They had assumed that their reunion would be quick, straightforward, and tear-free. Analia grabbed her sister's phone before they headed to the morgue so she could snap a photo of the infant for the burial and save it as a keepsake. When they arrived, Fabian went to the coffin while Analia set up the camera. He took a deep breath and then pried off the lid to reveal something they would never have guessed was within the coffin. Analia reasoned that if it was a prank, it was too costly, and that whomever or whatever was pulling it off ought to stop. However, with a second glance, she noticed the same thing. The tiny child was breathing and had even opened her eyes, so she wasn't fooled by her own eyes. When I lifted the lid, I noticed a little 5-fingered hand. After touching it, I revealed her face. A little cry was then heard by me. I told myself I was only dreaming. I stepped back then and watched her wake up. She seemed to be saying, "Mommy, you've come for me," said Analia. Not to be outdone, Fabian continued murmuring to himself, "It's my imagination. It's my imagination." However, it wasn't. Yes, their girl was still alive, but how exactly had she lived for 12 hours without any medical support? Her parents wondered. But they were still in too much of a fog to ask questions or even feel angry. All they wanted to say was thank you, God, for returning their daughter. They'd had to count their losses not too long ago, but now they got this daughter back, a second opportunity to love and adore. Fabian sprung into action, snatching the girl from her sobbing mother and sprinting to the hospital. He cried out for help to rescue his child at the top of his lungs as soon as he arrived at the newborn unit. The young child was freezing there in his arms, and he thought he was holding an ice bottle. Everyone had heard the news by then, and the hospital was in a state of chaos. Thus, how did this mistake even come to be? A group of medical professionals had earlier declared the girl dead. How could none of them, not even one, have noticed some life in her? Even worse, why didn't her parents approve of her hasty trip to the morgue? The doctors were unable to provide adequate answers to the numerous queries. The couple claimed that the birth procedure lacked professionalism. The girl was sent to the morgue as soon as she was delivered. Analia received her daughter's death certificate 20 minutes later. Whether the baby was dead or alive, she ought to have been holding it in her arms, not some strange piece of paper. All the fury she'd suppressed returned suddenly. Why wasn't she allowed to spend some time with her child before being taken away? "My kid was in a casket at 11:05 after she was delivered at 10 o'clock. She froze at the morgue for 12 hours. I observed the ice covering her body," she narrated. The couple notified the proper authorities about the case. They conducted a thorough study into the hospital's operations. Ultimately, while more inquiries were conducted, all of the employees engaged in the case were placed on leave. The head of the hospital said that Luce was born without any vital signs. The physicians speculated that she could have lived in the morgue because of a change in metabolism brought on by the lower temperatures. After Analia and Fabian changed the intended name of their daughter from Lucia to Luz Milagros, which translates to miracle light. In the days that followed, Luz's condition became better. It seemed sense that her parents transported her somewhere else rather than having her treated at the hospital, where she had been mistakenly pronounced dead. Prior to being discharged home, she had 10 weeks of intensive care at the hospital. Her health did improve, but because of her fragility, the physicians cautioned her family that she would require ongoing care. Everything proceeded smoothly for the following 8 months. Though everyone would have liked for things to stay that way, they didn't. Luz became seriously unwell 2 months after becoming 1 year old. Analia hurried to the hospital while clutching her infant, just like the first time. The girl was still alive back then, but now it appeared like she was prepared to say goodbye. Like was the only difference. As soon as Luz got to the hospital, she suffered a heart arrest. Sadly, she died since the physicians were unable to rescue her. She passed away from shock brought on by disseminated intravascular coagulation and multiple organ failure, according to the hospital's Secretary of Health. She experienced developmental issues and was diagnosed with, before she passed away, microcephaly. In an attempt to gather money, Anneli and Fabian planned to take their daughter to China for stem cell therapy. Doctors, however, never approved of the trip due of Luz's precarious condition. Sadly, this choice proved to be fatal for her. It's tragic that the girl's parents lost her twice. In spite of how hard she battled, daughter parents are happy that they got to spend a year with daughter, despite the sad loss. She was a joyful girl now, a survivor who had overcome all difficulties, in their memory. If she had passed away the first time, they would not have been able to say any of this. But today, if they were given a book to write a biography on, I'm sure there wouldn't be any blank pages. Both her parents and siblings would have lovely things to say about Luz. What aspect of little Luz's tale most inspires you? Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.